The power went out at exactly 9:47 p.m. on January 13th, right in the middle of the worst cold snap Wisconsin had seen in 15 years. And I knew within the first 30 seconds that this was going to be a nightmare. I was sitting in my living room in Pleasant Ridge Estates, a supposedly upscale housing development in Madison, when everything went dark. The hum of my central heating died immediately, and I could already feel the temperature starting to drop. My name is Harrison Foster, and I had lived in this house for 3 years, long enough to know that our HOA president, Patricia Henderson, would somehow find a way to make this situation worse for everyone. I grabbed my phone and turned on the flashlight. According to the emergency alert, a transformer had exploded about 2 miles away, and power wasn't expected back for at least 12 to 18 hours. The temperature outside was -8 degrees Fahrenheit, with wind chills making it feel like -25. Inside my house, it was currently 68 degrees, but that would not last. I had prepared for this exact scenario. After last year's brief outage during a thunderstorm, I had purchased 3 high-quality portable space heaters, the kind that could run on my backup generator. I also had plenty of fuel stored in my garage, following all the proper safety protocols. I went to retrieve my equipment. The generator fired up perfectly, rumbling to life in my garage with the exhaust properly vented outside. I had paid an electrician $2,000 to install a proper transfer switch, so I could safely power essential circuits in my home. Everything was by the book, everything was legal, and everything was about to go sideways because of Patricia Henderson. I set up 2 space heaters in my bedroom and 1 in the living room, getting the house comfortable again. Then I texted my neighbor Marcus to make sure he and his family were okay. "We're freezing," he replied. "Don't have a generator." Patricia sent out a message saying nobody is allowed to use generators because they're too loud and against HOA rules. I stared at my phone in disbelief. I pulled up the HOA group message and sure enough, there it was. A message from Patricia sent at 9:52 p.m. "Attention all residents. Due to the power outage, I am reminding everyone that generators are prohibited per HOA Covenant Section 7.3. Anyone using a generator will be fined. Also, please refrain from using excessive heating devices, as this creates an unfair advantage over other residents. We are all in this together." I read it 3 times, my anger building with each pass. Section 7.3 did mention generators, but it only prohibited permanent installation without architectural committee approval. Portable generators were explicitly allowed. I had checked this thoroughly before making my purchase. And what the hell did she mean about heating devices creating an unfair advantage? This was not a competition. This was survival. I called Marcus back. "Her message is wrong. Portable generators are allowed. I have the covenant right here." "Doesn't matter, man," Marcus said, his teeth chattering audibly through the phone. "You know Patricia. She will fine us anyway, then we have to fight it. I cannot afford that right now." I told Marcus to bring his family to my house. He refused, saying his wife was already sick and did not want to impose. I insisted, but he politely declined. After we hung up, I sat there furious. Patricia was effectively forcing people to freeze rather than admit she was wrong about the rules. The temperature in my house stabilized at around 65 degrees, which was perfectly comfortable under blankets. I checked my security cameras, something I had installed 6 months ago after someone kept leaving nasty notes on my door about my lawn being a 1/4 inch too tall. The cameras covered my front door, back door, garage, and had a wide view of my driveway and front yard. Everything was recording properly, backed up to cloud storage. At 11:34 p.m., I was dozing off when I heard something outside. It sounded like footsteps crunching in the snow, too heavy to be an animal. I pulled up my security camera feed on my phone and felt my blood run cold. Patricia Henderson was walking up my driveway with another woman I recognized as Susan Turner, the HOA secretary. They were bundled up in heavy winter coats, and Patricia was carrying a flashlight. They walked right up to my side door, the one that led into my garage. I watched in real time as Patricia tried the handle. It was locked. She said something to Susan, who pulled out her phone. I could not hear what they were saying, but I was recording everything. Then Patricia did something that made my jaw drop. She pulled out a key and unlocked my garage door. I was already moving, grabbing my own phone and rushing toward the garage. How the hell did she have a key to my house? But before I got there, I heard my garage door close. I switched to the garage camera feed. Patricia and Susan were inside my garage, pointing at my generator. Patricia unplugged something, and the house went quiet as my generator stopped. Then, and I could not believe what I was seeing, they started unplugging my space heaters. I burst through the door from my house into the garage. "What the hell are you doing?" Both women jumped. Patricia recovered quickly, drawing herself up to her full 5'4" height. "Harrison, we are confiscating prohibited items. Get out of my house right now, or I am calling the police." "This is not your house. This is the garage, which falls under HOA jurisdiction," Patricia said, her face flushed with self-righteousness. "You were warned about generators. Portable generators are allowed, and you know it. And these are my personal space heaters. You have no right to take them." Susan, who had been standing there looking increasingly uncomfortable, spoke up. "Patricia, maybe we should. We are well within our rights," Patricia cut her off. She grabbed two of my space heaters, unplugging them roughly. "These will be returned once the power is restored, and you have paid the appropriate fines. You are stealing my property. I have you on camera right now." Patricia's confident expression flickered for just a moment. "Cameras require HOA approval. You will be fined for those too. Security cameras do not require approval. That is in Section 9.6 of the Covenants. Your interpretation is incorrect." She nodded to Susan. "Get the other heater and that generator fuel." "Do not touch anything else," I said, stepping between Susan and my belongings. I had my phone out, recording everything. "I am telling you both right now, leave my property immediately." Patricia's face turned red. "You are in violation of multiple HOA rules. As president, I have the authority to enter any property to address violations that pose a danger to the community. My generator poses no danger. It is properly vented and maintained. You are trespassing and stealing. Leave now. We will see what the HOA board has to say about this." Patricia clutched my two space heaters and marched toward the door. Susan reluctantly picked up my third heater and followed her. I was so angry I was shaking, but I kept recording. "You are being recorded. This is theft. I will be pressing charges." Patricia turned back. "Press whatever you want. You signed the HOA covenant. You agreed to follow our rules. Actions have consequences, Harrison." They left, crunching back through the snow toward Patricia's house 3 doors down. I immediately called the non-emergency police number for Madison, but the dispatcher told me that due to the extreme weather and power outage, they were overwhelmed with emergency calls. Property theft where no one was in immediate danger would have to wait until morning. She took my information and said an officer would contact me. I went back inside my now powerless, rapidly cooling house and reviewed the footage. I had everything. Patricia using a key to enter my garage without permission, the two of them taking my property, the entire conversation. The timestamp, the clear video evidence of theft, but I was still freezing. I restarted my generator and went to check if I had any other heating options. I had a fireplace, but it was gas and needed electricity to operate the blower and safety systems. I had blankets, lots of them, but the temperature was already down to 58 degrees and dropping. I called my brother Derek, who lived across town. "You have power?" "Yeah, our grid is fine." "What is up?" I explained the situation. Derek was silent for a long moment, then exploded. "She stole your heaters during a blackout. In this weather, I have it all on video. Come stay here tonight, we have the guest room." I considered it, but something stubborn in me refused. "No, this is my house. I am not letting Patricia Henderson chase me out of my own home." "Harry, it is dangerous. You could get hypothermia." "I have the generator, I have my fireplace if I can figure out a workaround, and I have enough blankets to survive an Arctic expedition. I will be fine. But tomorrow, I am going to the sheriff's office with this footage." Derek tried to convince me otherwise, but I was determined. After we hung up, I put on thermal underwear, 2 pairs of socks, a hoodie, and wrapped myself in 3 blankets. I positioned myself on the couch and tried to sleep, but I was too angry. At 3:47 a.m., my phone buzzed. It was a message in the HOA group from Patricia. Reminder that hoarding heating resources during community emergencies is against HOA policy. Several violations have been addressed tonight. Fines will be issued accordingly. Stay warm, everyone. Stay warm. She told people to stay warm after stealing their heating equipment. I took screenshots of everything. The temperature in my house bottomed out at 41 degrees around 5 o'clock a.m. I was miserably cold but safe. I had read somewhere that as long as you stayed dry and had enough insulation, you could survive much colder temperatures. I was proving that theory correct, though I would not recommend it. Power came back at 6:23 a.m. The lights flickered on, and my heating system roared to life. I had never been so grateful for central heating in my entire life. Within an hour, the house was back to a comfortable temperature, and I could finally think clearly. I made coffee and reviewed all my security footage again, downloading everything to multiple drives. I had Patricia and Susan's entry at 11:34 p.m. I had the theft. I had Patricia's statements about HOA authority. I had everything I needed. At 8 o'clock a.m., I called the Dane County Sheriff's Office and asked to speak with someone about filing charges for theft. They directed me to the main office on Fish Hatchery Road. I showered, dressed in clean clothes, and prepared my evidence. Before I left, my doorbell rang. It was Marcus and his wife, Jennifer. "We heard what happened," Jennifer said. She looked exhausted with dark circles under her eyes. "Patricia came to our house too around 1 o'clock a.m. She tried to take our propane camping heater. Did she get it?" "No," Marcus blocked the door, "but she said we were in violation and would be fined $500. "Did you have her on camera?" "We do not have cameras," Marcus admitted. "But we have witnesses. Our kids saw everything." "I am going to the sheriff's office right now. Do you want to come with me?" They looked at each other. "We cannot afford legal trouble," Marcus said quietly. "If we fight her and lose, the fines will double. We just want to keep our heads down." I understood, but it frustrated me. Patricia is counting on that exact response. She is counting on everyone being too scared or too broke to fight back. "You have resources we do not have," Jennifer said softly. "We have 3 kids and we are barely making the mortgage as it is. I am sorry." After they left, I felt even more determined. Patricia was not just a busybody with too much time on her hands. She was a bully who targeted people she thought could not fight back. Time to prove her wrong. The Dane County Sheriff's Office was busy but organized. I spoke with a deputy named Officer Rodriguez. a woman in her 40s with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. I explained the situation and showed her my security footage on my laptop. She watched in silence, occasionally pausing to make notes. When Patricia's voice came through clearly saying, "We are confiscating prohibited items," Officer Rodriguez's eyebrows went up. "And you did not give her permission to enter?" "Absolutely not. I do not even know how she got a key to my garage. Previous owner, maybe." "Possibly, but that does not give her the right to use it." Officer Rodriguez nodded. "You are correct. This is pretty clear-cut, breaking and entering, theft of property. The HOA angle complicates things, but not in the way she probably thinks." She looked up at me. "HOAs have authority granted by covenant agreements, but they do not supersede criminal law. She cannot just enter your home and take your belongings, even if she believes they violate HOA rules. The proper procedure would be to fine you, then pursue legal action if you did not pay." "So what happens now?" "I will need to take your statement officially, get copies of this footage, and then we will pay Miss Henderson a visit. Do you want your property back, and do you want to press charges?" "Both. Definitely both." The official statement took another 45 minutes. Officer Rodriguez was thorough, asking about the timeline, my interaction with Patricia, the HOA covenant details, and whether there had been any prior incidents. I mentioned the lawn notes and some other petty fines Patricia had issued to various residents over the years. "Sounds like she has a pattern," Officer Rodriguez said. "That is helpful to establish intent." By 11 o'clock a.m. I was back home, and Officer Rodriguez said she would contact me later that afternoon. I made lunch and tried to distract myself with work, but I kept checking my phone. Around 2:30 p.m. I saw patrol cars drive past my house toward Patricia's home. My phone rang 15 minutes later. It was Officer Rodriguez. "We have recovered your property. 3 space heaters, correct?" "Yes, that is correct." Miss Henderson was not cooperative initially. She maintained that she had HOA authority to confiscate prohibited items. We explained that was not how the law works. We also spoke with Susan Turner, who confirmed the events of last night. Miss Turner was significantly more cooperative. "Is Patricia being charged?" "She is being arrested for burglary in the 2nd degree and theft. Burglary because she entered your dwelling without consent with intent to commit theft, and theft for taking your property. She will be processed and likely released on bail later today or tomorrow." The satisfaction I felt was immense. "Thank you. You will need to come pick up your heaters from evidence once they are processed, probably tomorrow, and you will likely need to appear in court if this goes to trial, though most of these cases end in plea deals. I have to warn you, this might create some tension in your neighborhood." "Patricia created the tension. I am just holding her accountable." "Fair enough. We will be in touch." Within an hour, the HOA group chat exploded. Someone had seen Patricia being led to the patrol car in handcuffs. The messages ranged from shock to support to outrage. One message from a resident named Tom. "Harry got Patricia arrested. Over a generator." Another from a woman named Kelly. "Good. She has been a tyrant for years. Maybe this will teach her she cannot just do whatever she wants." And then one from Richard, the HOA vice president. "Everyone please remain calm. We are gathering information about the situation. An emergency board meeting will be scheduled." I did not respond to any of it. I just waited. That evening, my doorbell rang again. This time it was Richard himself, a balding man in his 60s who had always struck me as reasonable but too willing to go along with Patricia's schemes. "Harrison, can we talk?" I let him in. He looked uncomfortable, fidgeting with his glasses. "I want to apologize," he said. "I did not know Patricia was going to people's houses taking their property. That is completely unacceptable." Did you know about her message telling people they could not use generators? He hesitated. I knew she was planning to send a reminder about HOA rules during the outage. I did not see the exact wording before she sent it. Richard, she told people they could not heat their homes during a life-threatening cold snap. Then she broke into my house and stole my heating equipment. This was not just a mistake or an overstep. This was dangerous. I know. He sat down heavily. The board is going to ask her to resign. This is too much. But I need to know, are you going to sue the HOA? There it was. The real reason for his visit. I have not decided yet. Right now, I am focused on the criminal case. If you do sue, it will come out of everyone's dues. Legal fees, settlement costs. We are not a wealthy HOA. Then maybe the board should have exercised better oversight over Patricia. How many other people has she bullied? How many questionable fines has she issued? This has been building for years. Richard did not have an answer for that. He left shortly after, and I felt a twinge of guilt about the dues comment. He was right that legal costs would hurt everyone, but Patricia had made her choices, and choices had consequences. That night, I could not sleep. I kept replaying everything in my mind, wondering if I had done the right thing. Yes, Patricia had stolen from me, but was arrest really necessary? Could I have handled it differently? By morning, my doubts had faded. I remembered Marcus's family, freezing in their home because they were too afraid to stand up to Patricia. I remembered the dozens of messages in the HOA chat over the years, people complaining about unfair fines and Patricia's aggressive enforcement of petty rules. This was not about revenge. This was about stopping someone who had been abusing their authority for too long. I picked up my space heaters from evidence on Thursday afternoon. The young officer who helped me was friendly, mentioning that the case had become something of a topic of conversation at the station. We see HOA disputes all the time, he said. Usually it is noise complaints or parking stuff. Never seen someone get arrested for stealing heaters during a blackout, though. That is a new one. On Friday, I received a formal notice from the HOA that Patricia Henderson had resigned as president effective immediately. Richard would serve as interim president until a new election could be held. There was also a note that all fines issued by Patricia in the last 6 months were being reviewed by an independent attorney. That attorney, a woman named Michelle Carr, contacted me the following week. She explained that the HOA board had hired her to review Patricia's conduct and determine if the organization had any liability. Off the record, Michelle said during our phone call, Patricia violated about a dozen different protocols. HOA presidents have authority over common areas and can enforce covenants, but everything she did that night was illegal. She should have known that. Will the HOA face any consequences? Possibly. It depends on whether you or anyone else decides to sue. Technically, Patricia acted outside her authority, so the HOA could argue they are not liable for her criminal actions. But there could be an argument that they negligently supervised her, especially if there is a pattern of behavior. That is where things get complicated. I thought about Marcus and Jennifer, about the messages from other residents who had been fined unfairly. What if we wanted to reform the HOA instead of suing? Michelle was quiet for a moment. That is definitely an option. What did you have in mind? Over the next several weeks, I worked with Michelle, Richard, and a group of concerned residents to completely overhaul our HOA's governing structure. We implemented new rules requiring board approval for any fines over $100. We created an appeals process for residents who felt they had been unfairly targeted. We clarified the covenant language around generators, security cameras, and dozens of other areas that Patricia had weaponized. The most significant change was implementing term limits. No one could serve as HOA president for more than 2 consecutive years. Patricia had been president for 7 years straight. Patricia's criminal case moved forward slowly, as these things do. Her attorney tried to argue that she had been acting in her official capacity as HOA president and had genuinely believed she had the authority to confiscate prohibited items. The district attorney was not buying it. I had to give a deposition in March. Patricia's attorney, a sharp-dressed man named Kenneth Briggs, tried to paint me as vindictive and suggested I had baited Patricia into the confrontation. Is it not true that you could have simply complied with the HOA rules and avoided this entire situation? He asked. I was complying with the rules, I replied. Portable generators are explicitly allowed under Section 7.3 of our covenant. That is one interpretation. It is the correct interpretation. Your client decided her interpretation was more important than what the document actually says. Then she broke into my home and stole my property. Entered the garage, he corrected, not the home. In Wisconsin, garages attached to residences are considered part of the dwelling for purposes of burglary statutes. Your client committed burglary. Kenneth did not like that answer. The deposition continued for another hour, but I felt good about it. In April, Patricia accepted a plea deal. She pleaded no contest to misdemeanor theft and criminal trespass. The burglary charge was dropped as part of the agreement. She was sentenced to 1-year probation, 100 hours of community service, and ordered to pay restitution for my space heaters and legal fees, totaling about $1,600. She was also permanently banned from serving in any HOA leadership position as part of her probation terms, which was arguably more significant than the criminal penalties. The judge had included that condition specifically, noting in his statement that HOA boards require trustworthy individuals who respect the law and other people's property rights. I attended the sentencing hearing. Patricia looked smaller somehow, diminished. She did not make eye contact with me. When the judge asked if she wanted to make a statement, she declined. Susan Turner also received consequences, though less severe. She was fined $500 and ordered to attend a community mediation course. She resigned from the HOA board and apparently started avoiding neighborhood events entirely. The real victory came in May, when we held our new HOA elections. A woman named Rachel Chen, who had lived in the neighborhood for a decade and had been a vocal critic of Patricia's leadership, was elected president by a landslide. Richard remained on the board, along with 2 other new members who ran on a platform of transparency and reasonable enforcement. At the first meeting under the new leadership, Rachel addressed everyone gathered in the community center. I want to be clear about something, she said. This HOA exists to maintain our property values and ensure our neighborhood is a pleasant place to live. It does not exist to control people's lives or harass residents over minor issues. We are going to focus on what matters, maintaining common areas, addressing legitimate safety concerns, and building a real community. Everything else is just noise. People actually applauded. It felt like the neighborhood had been holding its breath for years and could finally exhale. Marcus approached me after the meeting. Thank you for doing what you did. I know it was not easy. You would have done the same. He shook his head. I am not sure I would have, but I am glad you did. Life in Pleasant Ridge Estates slowly returned to normal, but it was a better normal. People seemed more relaxed. The HOA group chat became less toxic, more focused on actual community issues like organizing a neighborhood garage sale or discussing repairs to the playground. I saw Patricia once more in June at the grocery store. We ended up in the same checkout line. She noticed me, and for a moment I thought she might say something. Instead, she grabbed her bags and left quickly without a word. I wondered what she was thinking. Did she understand why what she did was wrong? Did she feel remorse or just resentment at being caught? I would probably never know. My brother Derek came over for dinner one evening in July. We sat on my back deck, enjoying the warm weather and grilling steaks. "You ever regret how everything went down?" he asked. I thought about it. "No, I wish it had not been necessary. I wish Patricia had just been reasonable. But she created the situation. All I did was hold her accountable. Some people are still mad at you, though." That was true. There were a few residents, mostly older folks who had been friendly with Patricia, who viewed me as the villain in the story. They thought I had overreacted, that I should have just let her issue a fine and fought it through proper channels. They conveniently ignored that the proper channels were controlled by Patricia and her allies. "I can live with that," I said. "I can live with a few people being mad at me. What I could not live with was letting Patricia keep terrorizing people." Derek raised his beer, "To standing up to bullies." I clinked my bottle against his. "To standing up to bullies." The following months were quiet. The HOA ran smoothly under Rachel's leadership. Fines were issued only when genuinely warranted and always with warning letters first. The appeals process was actually used, and some questionable decisions were reversed. It was everything an HOA should be. In September, I was elected to the Architectural Review Committee, which oversees requests for modifications to properties. It was not a position I had sought, but several neighbors had nominated me, and I felt obligated to serve after everything that had happened. The committee work was actually interesting. We reviewed requests for fence installations, shed construction, exterior paint color changes, and similar projects. The goal was to maintain aesthetic consistency while being reasonable about people's needs. It was bureaucratic, sure, but it felt constructive rather than destructive. During one meeting, a newer resident named Paul wanted to install solar panels on his roof. Under Patricia's leadership, this would have been automatically denied because she thought they looked ugly. Under our new system, we evaluated the request based on actual impact. The panels would be on the back slope of his roof, barely visible from the street. We approved it unanimously. "This is wild," Paul said afterward. "I was prepared for a fight. I have heard horror stories about HOAs. We are trying to be better," I told him. As autumn arrived and the leaves began to change, I realized that the entire situation with Patricia had fundamentally changed how I viewed community and responsibility. Before, I had been mostly passive. I paid my dues, followed the rules, and kept my head down. When something seemed wrong, I grumbled about it privately but rarely took action. Now I understood that communities only function when people are willing to stand up for what is right, even when it is uncomfortable or difficult. Especially then. I also learned that systems and institutions are only as good as the people running them. An HOA can be a positive force, maintaining property values and organizing community activities. Or it can become a tool for petty tyrants to exercise power over their neighbors. The difference comes down to leadership, oversight, and accountability. In October, I ran into Susan Turner at a neighborhood Halloween event. She was with her grandchildren, and she looked healthier than the last time I had seen her, less stressed. She approached me hesitantly. "Harrison, can I talk to you for a minute?" We stepped away from the crowd. Susan took a deep breath. "I want to apologize for my part in what happened last winter. I knew it was wrong, but I went along with Patricia anyway. I was scared of her, honestly. She had a way of making you feel like if you were not with her, you were against her. I appreciate you saying that. The fine and the course I had to take, they actually helped me understand how bad things had gotten. I let myself become complicit in bullying because I did not want to be the target. That is not who I want to be. We talked for a while longer. Susan explained that she had become involved with the HOA years ago with good intentions, wanting to help maintain the neighborhood. But Patricia had gradually pushed out anyone who questioned her, creating an echo chamber of yes people. Susan had been one of the few who stayed, and she regretted not speaking up sooner. "You did speak up eventually," I pointed out. "You cooperated with the sheriff's investigation." "That took courage. It was the bare minimum of human decency. But thank you." As winter approached again, almost a year after the space heater incident, I made sure my generator was maintained and my heating equipment was in good working order. I also reached out to several elderly neighbors, including a widow named Dorothy who lived alone, to make sure they had emergency plans in case of another outage. "You are sweet to check on me," Dorothy said when I called, "but I actually have a whole setup now. Generator, heaters, emergency food." Last year scared me. I was freezing in my house, too proud to ask for help. Never again. That conversation reminded me that Patricia's actions had affected far more people than just me. Her theft of my heaters was the visible crime, the one caught on camera. But her broader pattern of behavior had created an atmosphere of fear and isolation throughout the neighborhood. People had been afraid to help each other, afraid to speak up, afraid to do anything that might draw Patricia's attention. Breaking that cycle had been worth the trouble. In December, the HOA held its annual holiday party. In previous years, these had been stiff, formal affairs where Patricia would lecture everyone about rule compliance. This year, under Rachel's leadership, it was actually fun. There was music, good food, and people seemed genuinely happy to be there. Rachel pulled me aside at one point. "I want you to know that what you did last year, it changed this place. People feel safe in their own homes now. That matters." "You have done most of the work," I said. "I just lit the match. You built something better." "We built something better, all of us." She was right. Change was not the result of one person's action but the collective effort of people who cared enough to participate. The neighborhood had become more active, more engaged. People attended meetings, volunteered for committees, and actually read the covenant documents instead of just living in fear of violating unknown rules. I thought about Patricia occasionally, wondering what she was doing. I had heard through the neighborhood gossip chain that she and her husband were considering moving. Someone said she had become active in a local charity, working with a food bank. I hoped that was true. I hoped she had learned something from the experience, that she was channeling her energy into something positive rather than controlling. But whether she learned anything or not, the neighborhood had moved on. We were better for it. As the anniversary of the space heater theft approached, a local news reporter contacted me. Apparently, the story had made rounds on social media, and she wanted to do a piece about HOA overreach and reform. I declined the interview. The story was not about me, and I did not want to become some crusader against HOAs in general. Our situation had been specific, our solutions had been local, and I had no interest in fame or attention. What I wanted was to live peacefully in my home, to be part of a community that functioned well, and to know that if something went wrong again, there were systems in place to address it properly. On January 13th, exactly 1 year after the outage, I received a letter in the mail. It was from Patricia. The letter was handwritten, 2 pages long. She apologized for her actions, explaining that she had been under enormous stress at the time and had convinced herself that she was doing the right thing for the community. She acknowledged that she had been wrong, that she had violated my rights and endangered people's safety with her actions during the cold snap. She also wrote about the therapy she had started, addressing what her counselor called control issues stemming from anxiety. She was working on understanding why she had behaved the way she did, taking responsibility rather than making excuses. The letter ended with a simple statement. "I am sorry for what I did to you and to this neighborhood. I hope you can forgive me someday, but I understand if you cannot. You were right to hold me accountable." I read the letter 3 times. It seemed genuine, thoughtful. I wanted to believe it was. I did not respond immediately. I sat with it for a few days, considering whether I actually wanted to forgive Patricia or if I was still too angry. Eventually, I realized that forgiveness was not really about her. It was about me letting go of the resentment I had been carrying. I wrote a short reply, thanking her for the apology and wishing her well. I did not say I forgave her, because I was not entirely sure I did. But I acknowledged her effort to make amends, and I meant it when I said I hope she found peace. Whether Patricia ever found that peace, I do not know. We never spoke again. But I found mine, living in a neighborhood that had learned to govern itself with reason and respect, surrounded by neighbors who had become friends, secure in the knowledge that when someone abuses their power, there are consequences. My space heaters sat in my garage, ready for the next emergency. My generator was maintained and functional. My security cameras kept recording, though now they mostly captured squirrels and delivery drivers. And when the next winter storm rolled through Wisconsin, bringing snow and cold but no power outages, I stayed warm in my home, grateful for central heating and the simple right to exist peacefully in the place I had chosen to live. That, ultimately, was what the entire fight had been about. Not revenge, not making a point, but securing the basic human right to be safe and warm in your own home without fear of someone in a position of petty authority deciding to make your life difficult for no good reason. The neighborhood continued to thrive. Property values actually increased, partly because word got around that Pleasant Ridge Estates had reformed its HOA and was now one of the more reasonable communities in Madison. New families moved in, drawn by the promise of good neighbors and fair governance. I remained active in the HOA, serving on committees and occasionally mediating disputes between residents. It was work I had never imagined myself doing, but it felt important. Someone once said that the price of freedom is eternal vigilance, and the same is true for good governance at any level, even something as small as a neighborhood HOA. Years from now, people might forget the details of what happened that cold January night. The story would become simplified, distorted, maybe even legendary. But the lessons would remain, embedded in the new structures and processes we had built. No one person would ever again have unchecked power over the neighborhood. Rules would be enforced fairly and transparently. And if someone tried to abuse their authority, there would be people ready to stand up and say no, just as I had done. That was my legacy from the space heater incident. Not the arrest or the conflict, but the reminder that ordinary people have the power to change broken systems when they find the courage to take action. As I sat in my warm, comfortable home, generator maintained and ready in the garage, space heaters stored safely, security cameras recording the peaceful night, I felt something I had not felt in years. Genuine contentment with where I lived and who I lived among. Patricia Henderson had inadvertently given me a gift. In trying to control and dominate, she had shown me the importance of community, accountability, and the quiet courage it takes to stand up for what is right even when it would be easier to stay silent. And in the end, that made all the difference.